there, went to Bardsey. And I was there for a month. And it was during that time that it was the migration season for birds. And on Bardsey they used to have the trellis work up for the birds. Now I can remember very distinctly, I was on watch one night on Bardsey in the lantern, and as I looked out, there were birds everywhere on the staging all the way round. But what was strange was they were watching the beam going round, and they were going like that, and then back like that. It was eerie to see them, you know. And of course, the next morning, there's birds everywhere. I suppose they got filled up, the perches and that, and there's more. And there's all kinds of birds. Now I know the keepers that were there, they didn't waste them. They made a pie with, I don't know what kind of birds they used, but it was delicious anyway. And of course it was during that time that I had a birthday there. That was so I'd have been 24. I'd been 24 then. And Leonard Hicks was the supernumerary. And on our afternoon off together, he said, let's go up round the mountain. That was the one end, there was the mountain. And of course, I said, yeah, that'd be nice, stretch our legs. And he said, we'll go up round that way. So we went up round that way. And my goodness, I was frightened to life, because we climbed. You've been to Bardsey? Do you know the steepest part? It's like goat tracks and that there. Well, we went along those goat tracks, Leonard Hicks and I. Of course, when I saw, I thought that was footpaths. So that was only goat tracks. And we got decisions that I never thought that I was going to finish that was on my birthday, on the February the 7th, 1935. And when we got so far around, I said, crikey, Len, I said, how much further we got to go? Oh, he says, not much further. He says, not much. I was too afraid to say, well, let's go back, because I couldn't face to go back the way we come. So he says, well, round there further, there's a cave. He says, we'll get up round to that. Whether there was a cave or not, I don't know, but we eventually got right the way round and got home safely. There was a proper primitive affair. They only used the islanders that were there. There's only a family or two there then. Some of them had never been away from the island, but they had a sort of a whaler boat. They used to go across market, take their sheep and that, cattle, and over to Aberdaron. And of course, when they came back, all the island used to turn out. They had a winch there to winch the boat in. And I know everybody had to take part, even the lighthouse keepers. I know I took part. And I swear to goodness that there was one occasion, there was a hand on both sides of the winch. And I swear to goodness that I was the only one that was pulling on the... Anyway, that's that story.
And then from the Skerries down to Bardsey, another nice place. quite big again. This was from the 25th of October to the 22nd of November 1950. Farm on Bardsey, you could go and get eggs, fresh milk. Quite a nice billet this was. And plenty of room to move about.
Badsey Island, and that was a delight, of course, because on Badsey Island you had plenty of room to romp about. I think it was about 1.25 miles long, Badsey Island, and the mountain on it, if we could call it a mountain, at 440 odd feet. And once again, if you did your watches, you see, you've gone through your sequence of watches, you got time off, and I used to thoroughly enjoy the middle watch anyway, because it was a nice peaceful time, no phone calls, no aggravation, and after a middle watch you could take to your bed for a bit, knowing that you're off the next day, and next day have your breakfast, hoping for fine weather, and then go walk about around the island. Or even if you're on a smaller, more restricted place, at least you could go scrambling around on the rocks, or a bit of bronzy and things of that nature. So Bardsey Island was certainly wide open spaces in comparison. The fact that you had people living on the island as well added to the appeal of the place, because Arthur and Jane Strick, they were on Bardsey at that time. We're now September 72, yeah, and they had a couple there as well, Yanis and I forget the lady's name, but they didn't stay there very long. And I do remember meeting Ernest Evans there, and Will Evans, of course, Ernest's dad, and Nellie, because they were over there just for the summer and they were living in the schoolhouse. And I think Will used to do his lobster pots and such like around Bardsey. And even at that time, then even they had sheep and livestock. Arthur and Jane had got organised in that direction. And
did you help out with the farm out?
Well, yeah, I do remember Jane coming down and asking for keepers to help out rounding up the sheep. Yeah, when they wanted to get the sheep in for dealing with them, sending them ashore and so on. So there was quite a bit of participation, interchange between the keepers and the islanders, which was a good thing, yeah. Because this is a thing I have noticed, that when I first joined the job, I think it was more of a community sort of attitude with keepers and with people they met. When the double manning came in 74 or so, I mean, I'm an insular sort of person myself, but I did find that people, a lot of cases, people were more sort of individual and insular than they had been. There wasn't quite that same degree of mucking in together, because it was around 1974-75 the idea of cooking for each other was phasing out pretty rapidly. And that was, like it or not, that was a sort of social highlight of the day. It did sort of bind people together a bit when they were cooking for each other and such like. People, I think, did tend to become more insular after that. And also the television seemed to be getting a stronger hold from about 1974 onwards. And once people started getting busy on the old glue to the goggle box, tragically, I think that did kill off a lot of hobbies of people making mats and ships in bottles and things of this nature. Whereas in early days, the telly used to be on just for a limited amount of time for something special generally, rather than left on all day. And I went to Bardsey for a fortnight with Arthur Robertson. And on Bardsey, they'd had trouble with the water tanks. They'd got contamination in the water tanks, so we had to pump them up. What had happened was the lavatories, they had a backflash from the lavatories somehow. So there was all sorts of horrible things in the drinking water tanks. We had to pump them out. And of course, I was there with Arthur Robertson and John Cox. They couldn't fit down into the tanks. And, well, Robbie wouldn't have gone down anyway, of course, being PK. So Muggins here was the one who went down. And Peter Williams came out and he fitted in the tanks as well. So we had a good old scrub out of the tanks, got them cleaned up. And around this time, the opposite keeper was Fred Jones at Bardsey, I believe, yeah. Poor old Fred, he died not long after that, around that time, not long after, I think. And one story, Arthur Robertson was a great one. Robbie was a great one for telling stories, and he did tell this yarn about Fred Jones. So, sorry, Fred Jones must have already gone, popped off. Because Robbie talked about this incident where he'd been cleaning out Fred Jones's room and burning a lot of the stuff that had been left behind, clothing and such like. Made a big bonfire in the yard, and he threw this jacket onto the pile of old books and bits and pieces. He was sauntering back to the lighthouse, walking away from the fire, and all of a sudden these bullets are ping, popping off in all directions, and it's a load of bullets that had been left in the jacket pocket, two bullets. And Arthur Robertson ran back to the lighthouse and he said, "My God, he's trying to get me from the grave!" But luckily none of the shots got him, so he's safely back inside. But he was a great man for stories with Arthur Robertson. It's a pity you're not going to be able to get him down on tape because he's unfortunately long gone.
This is an extract of what Steve Davies, assistant keeper, once told me. He was on Bardsey in 1982, he thinks. Suddenly it was whiteout conditions all around the lighthouse. Sounded like a 125 train going through the station, only it lasted 7 to 8 minutes. Building really shook, then it was gone just as quick. He thought it was a tornado or a possible waterspout crossing the island or some such thing. Further along the coastline, caravans were thrown out everywhere. A well-known keep fit merchant in full trim, one of the other keepers, couldn't even open the door against the suction to get out to look. They monitor the weather on Bardsey, and the anemometer went straight off the scale. I haven't been back here for about 25 years, and it used to smell of oil and people and polish. Now it's just concrete dust. It's not a very nice smell at all. Concrete dust and emptiness. Is emptiness a smell? Grief. Right, as I said, I haven't been back for 25 years. I've been on lockdown for months for this pandemic, so this is going to be one hell of a heavy breathing video. Grief.
I'm Colin Emmons, I'm the attendant for this station, Badsey Island. In the same way as my father was, he started off as a supernumerary here when he was 16, and that was in 1959. And, he came in right at the end of the big fog engines, the big Gardner fog engines that produced the compressed air for the air horn. And that then was upgraded in the 60s then to electric. So he's seen it all really from the beginning. Now even my grandfather, his father, contracted for Trinity House, laying stone on the road up to the lighthouse and carrying barrels of gas oil and kerosene up here and paraffin. So we've got a long-standing connection with the place. I'm the attendant. I've got 3 children. I hope one of them will become the attendant one day. And we're luckily enough, my wife and I, we've bought the buildings off Trinity House at the bottom of the tower. So we hope to be able to continue the family tradition of living and working on Badsey. Well, the light now is now an LED light. It's a red LED light. I think it's 18 miles nominal range. It's been downgraded a bit from the old catadioptric rotating lens with 5 flashes. That's now an exhibit in the National Trust Museum in Aberdaron. But this is entirely solid state. It works off the solar panels that you might see in the garden, and it's got the batteries are now contained in the bottom of the tower. It's amazing to think really that this whole complex with its 2 houses, three original dwellings, and all the buildings that houses all the engines and all the equipment to produce a fog signal and a light is now concentrated into one tower 100 feet high. That's technology for you, I suppose.